If you're new to gardening and don't know where to start, here's some tips to get you going to create a garden you'll love and support beneficial wildlife like our birds and pollinators. First of all, start by looking at your lifestyle needs. Do you want to use the space for entertaining, with a barbecue, patio, tables and chairs? Do you want an area for your kids to play on? Do you want a spot for your dog to run around, or a raised vegetable garden? Once you've identified those spots, then you can look at the space in and around them to see what kind of conditions they offer, so you can suitably match plants that will thrive there. So, starting with light, find the different spots in your garden where you'd like to plant and see, does it get more than 6 hours of sun? If so, that's considered full sun, and you want to get plants that like to grow out in full sun. If you get 3 to 6 hours of direct light, then that's called partial shade or partial sun, and anything less than that is considered shade. It's not necessarily deep shade, it's just not direct sun. It can still be bright. Then you can look at your soil conditions. Is it an area where it's very moist? Always. Then you're going to want to have some moist-loving plants. If it's very dry, then perhaps you can get some drought-tolerant plants, although many plants do grow in average soil. You can look to see if your soil is very poor. Maybe it's a new development and there's lots of rocks. You might need to actually bring in some soil. But you might also want to amend with compost, which is organic matter decomposed from kitchen scraps and leaf and yard waste, and very, very nourishing for the soil and plants. It's also really good organic matter to help the roots breathe better and retain moisture properly. Once you've looked at that, then you can start planning what plants you want to bring in. So get plants, of course, with the colors that you want. But if you can get a plant blooming in every season, you're doing well for you visually, but also for our wildlife. And that's if you've got a very small space. The bigger your area, of course, the more plants you can include. And you can have bigger clumps of flower colors and also different kinds of flowers, which increases the diversity, which is very important for pollinators who do need different kinds of flowers. That sort of brings in the point of perennials versus annuals. A lot of these plants are perennials. They're going to bloom for a few weeks each year. They're the ones that come back year after year. In between their bloom times, you might want to have some annuals to fill in some gaps while other perennials get established, or just bring in extra color. And that's great. Keep in mind when you buy them though, a lot of plants have had their nectar and pollen and producing abilities bred out of them. So they're pretty for us, but they're kind of useless for wildlife. So you might want to look to see where are the bees and insects landing at the nursery, or do some research online to see which ones are still fertile. And better yet, ask at the nursery and they might be able to tell you. In fact, another point is to avoid plants grown with neonicotinoids. They're a kind of pesticide which is so tenacious, if a seed is sprayed with them, that pesticide can stay with the plant its entire life, to the point where when bees go to feed on the nectar and pollen, they can be harmed or even worse, die. So again, ask your nursery, do you grow plants with neonicotinoids? They might not, but ask if the place where they get their seeds from has been sprayed or treated with neonics. Often there's some fine print they need to check. So good things to be asking our nurseries for them to be aware of. Another thing is native plants. We have a lot of beautiful native plants in Canada. They're not just weedy things in the ditch people associate with native plants. They can be gorgeous. And they have perfectly co-evolved with our local and migratory wildlife to be their perfect food. So I invite you to go exploring those. We do have some resources online at the Canadian Wildlife Federation to help you find some for your area. Once you've done planning, you're getting ready now to plant. So look at the area that you're thinking of planting in and prep it. You're going to mark the spot where you're going to want to dig. Use string or twigs and then stand back and look to see what it looks like and adjust accordingly until you get the shape and the size that you're most comfortable with. You might even want to go in your house and go to a window that gazes upon that area and see what it looks like from there and adjust accordingly. After that's done, you're going to want to dig, and if you find that you need to amend the soil with something like compost, then that's the perfect time to do it. After you've done that, get your plants, place them. Again, do a spot check to see if it looks good to you. Stand in different areas, make sure the layers work well together, make sure there's enough space in between them so at their full height they actually will have enough space to be there. If you do have to space them widely apart, again, you can use annuals, containers, in the meantime, just until they get fuller and thicker as temporary plants. But the ones you're going to dig in, make sure you find the spot and then start digging the hole. You want the hole to be just a little bit bigger than the root ball. That will allow the roots place to spread. And what I highly recommend is that you water that hole thoroughly. Drench it. Make sure that hole is very, very wet. So when you put the roots in, that plant has so much moisture all around the root ball. What we often do is we'll plant it, put the soil on, and then water it. And sometimes the water just goes down a wee bit. That could be because the soil is very poor, or it could be because we don't water it enough. But either way, the plant's gone through stress. You want to minimize the stress as much as possible. So make sure it's got water from the get-go. Of course, you're going to want to water it quite thoroughly until its roots are established, which could be several weeks or several months, depending on the plant. Another tip to help reduce stress on the plant when you're actually digging them in is do it on a shady day. Actually, the whole process of taking it out of its pot, putting it in a new location, getting it in a new environment can be quite stressful. And the sun can actually increase the chances of it wilting and being strained, and could actually impact the chances of survival and how quickly it bounces back or not. So keep those things in mind as you get ready to plant. The third point after planting and planting is maintenance. So we talked a little bit about watering. You're going to want to water pretty regularly after the plants have been newly planted. In general, moving forward, it's really best if you can water plants at the base of the plant, right where the soil is. That way you're not wasting the water on the leaves. If it's a hot sunny day and you've got a sprinkler going in the middle of the afternoon, you're not evaporating a lot of water. You're actually getting it right to where the roots need it, which will save water and it'll save you time. As well, you might want to look at mulch. Again, another great thing. It can be a time saver. It can help your plants. It keeps weeds down. It keeps the moisture in, so it doesn't dry out as quickly on the hot summer days. And it slowly releases nutrients to the ground. Highly recommend, again, natural mulch, undyed, and finely shredded also, because that is more beneficial to some wildlife, harmless wildlife that might want to dig in there and make their nest, such as some of our solitary bees, which are very docile and very beneficial. Of course, if you don't have much space to plant, or in addition to planting, you want to explore containers. They can be a fantastic way to decorate a patio, to fill in little gaps here and there, as well as if all you have is a balcony, it's a super thing to do, to grow herbs and veggies and plants. You want to make sure that you water them well, especially if they're in the sun, and especially if they're in a clay pot, which is more porous. Another important factor to consider is habitat for food. It's very, very simple to include these elements in your garden while you're planning for yourself. Basically, keep in mind food, water, and shelter. The plants you're going to be choosing will most likely be providing food in the shelter. All the different layers, all the different types, all the different kinds produce pollen and nectar, fruit and seeds. And again, this is beneficial to our pollinators, to so many of our birds, but these layers as well will also support so many insects. Insects you'll probably never notice are there in your life, that are so critically important to our birds. In fact, one pair of birds may need thousands of caterpillars to raise one clutch of eggs. So the more we can support our wildlife with these native species, the better. Dogs, that combined with water, and it can be a simple dish of water from your kitchen sink, or a fancy bird bath that you buy, they all come together as the main habitat elements to help our wildlife thrive. Of course, it's important to keep the space safe, avoid pesticides, so that all the animals are safe themselves, as is their food supply. If you can avoid invasive plants, it's very, very important. There's one in particular, the Norway maple. It's a tree that's been planted very commonly. It's a great example of an invasive plant that it can slowly spread to our natural areas. It can be quite aggressive, push out our native plants, which reduces the food supply for our wildlife, which means there's less birds that are going to want to nest there. There's less wildlife that can be supported by these animals. So keep in mind, again, if you have some ornamental plants, great. Make sure they're not invasive, but include as many native plants as you are comfortable. I hope these tips have been helpful to you. There's loads more where it came from with the Canadian Wildlife Federation's gardening website, canadianwildlifefederation.ca/gardening. You can check out our native plant encyclopedia, our native plant supplier list, articles on how to support the different flora and fauna that you might have in your garden, and lots more.